perfect time to turn to our next speaker, the amazing, incomparable Ceah Justice. Ceah joins us from Raytheon, where she's the Director of Global Engagement. And she also is an amazing proponent for change. She's going to talk to us about challenging the status quo. And she will be interviewed by my colleague, Alexis Smith from Fairygodboss.
Thank you, Romy. This has just been an incredible event for me already. They are afraid of the collective us. Reshma, that is amazing. Hi, Ceah. So glad that you are here. Hello to the Fairygodboss community. I am Alexis Smith. I am a brand strategy manager at Fairygodboss. And I do want to introduce Ceah, but I am going to start with this first, if you don't mind. And I pulled this from your Twitter and your LinkedIn, and I just thought it was the perfect way to start this session. Empowering others to tap into their truest potential is my superpower. Inspiring change is my passion. Building inclusive, people-centered culture is what I do. An authentic, energetic, dope soul committed to empowering, inspiring, and celebrating women.
Yes,
Justice.
Queen, me.
Ceah Justice, Head of Global Employee Engagement at Raytheon Technologies. You've had a really unique and purposeful career trajectory, and I just love the view on job history on LinkedIn. It looks so much like a ladder. Even just taking a look at your almost 10-year career at T-Mobile, where you started in retail as a manager, and then you climbed your way all the way to the top to a director role. Can you tell us a little bit about your career journey?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for that introduction. And I have to give you your flowers now. You're absolutely gorgeous. So beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And I'm excited to be on this platform with you. But like I was saying, 25 years of experience leading diverse teams. I've been in public sector, private sector. I've done government. I was actually in the military, and I have also spent some time in corporate. So if I think about, my experience aside from the military, I've worked mostly in business sales in the telecommunications industry. And then last year, some people were like, Ceah, you lost your mind, but I did a complete different in terms of career switch. And I left telecommunications, I left sales, and went into DNI work full time. So I currently am, like you said, the Director of Global Employee Engagement at Raytheon Technologies, and I couldn't be more excited. But one of the things that I want to call out, because if you want to go see my resume, it's out there, and I'm sure it looks like a ton of folks' resume. But the thing that I want to, really call out for the purpose of today's conversation, and just kind of, listening to, Rashma just now, and I'm actually bouncing between this conference today and another conference, Simmons Leadership Conference. And one of the things that I can tell you is the theme is the same. When you think about women and our trajectory in our careers, period, I think we all have a story of some point in our career where it was a struggle, where we were, minimized or dismissed. I think at this point we all, have a journey like that. But if I think about myself, for me, it was sometimes a triple whammy. And I say that because if you think about sales, it's predominantly male. And a lot of times I was the only Black. I was the only woman. I was the first or only openly gay leader. And it wasn't easy. And if you think about it, always having to work 10 times as hard for a small ounce of recognition. I struggled to be seen. I struggled to be heard. I wasn't invited to the party. I can tell you it was lonely and it was isolating. But one of the things that I really tried to do was navigate from a different space. I shared, with you before. I grew up in the South, right? And, growing up in the Bible Belt of the South and being Black and gay and having to come out to my family, I almost feel like I almost had some training before walking into corporate world. So when I got there, I almost had all of those tools and everything, built inside of me, right? Having to come out to a very religious family. And so, being the first person in college. And so my journey, period, has always been the first or the only. And so when I got to corporate, navigating on that space, while it was hard, while it was difficult, I'm also very grateful for my personal experiences because it almost gave me the tools and the resources that I needed to show up differently in the space, to take up space differently. I did come into corporate and was learning those difficult lessons, right out of the gate. And so I began to navigate that space with a little bit more intention once I realized, okay, this is no different than my personal life, really. This is really not any different than, me having to convince Papa, right, that everything that he reads in the Bible, I don't have to accept that. I have a choice in my life, in how, things happen. So I took that same mentality over into the workplace. And like you said, as a result, I was able to get, promoted, just in great succession and pretty quickly, because that has always, been my lens. Control the things that I can't control, right? Focus on the things that I can absolutely impact, and really look at that as the lens through which I navigate the corporate space. And I know I said a lot.
No, that was a lot, and that was beautiful. And I just love that you painted this picture that you have just become comfortable thriving in the struggle, in the midst of a struggle. And so cheers to you. And also thank you for your service. I'm going to jump into the next question, but before I do that, I wanted to remind the Fairygodboss community that we will be open to questions at the end of this fireside chat. And so please be sure to use the Q&A to ask any questions, and I will read through as many as possible before we are done with the session. So Ceah, a lot of women are here today because they're feeling really burned out. How do you keep yourself and your workforce engaged? And what are your secrets for combating burnout?
Whew, girl, we tired. Grandma would say we tired. We tired. Just take the R out because we're just tired. That's a real concern. And I don't want to sound like a broken record coming off of the conversation that we just had, but self-care. It is a theme that we just continue to hear about, and more people need to really jump on board. The reality is that I don't care what company you work for, we can be replaced in a heartbeat, okay? The company is always going to do what's best for the business. And listen, totally makes sense. If you're a business owner out there, it makes sense that you're going to have to do what you have to do to keep your business afloat. And that's the reality. And so for me personally, it makes sense to navigate from that reality, right? I allow that to be that guiding principle that really forces me to focus on those things that really matter most. And that's not to say that like your job isn't important, but I simply recognize that there's more to me than just being an employee. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a friend. And all of those relationships that I have, they go beyond my career and they deserve to be nurtured too. And so while I don't ever believe that there's a thing called work-life balance, I don't think that exists. If somebody out there has figured out the secret formula, please tell me. But I do believe that we can be intentional, right, with how we show up, how we spend our time. I believe that we can invest in all those things that bring us joy. And that's where I am right now. I'm in the point of my life where if it doesn't bring me happiness and joy, I don't want to do it. So some of the other things that I do to combat burnout, eat right? Making sure that what we put in our bodies is good, exercising, meditating, getting plenty of sleep. And these are all things that I struggle with. I think about climbing the corporate ladder. These were not things that were in balance. I also love to golf. And so what is a hobby that you love? For me, smacking golf balls does it every single time. And so I create space for me to do that. But also self-care could look like things like saying no when your plate is full, right? We all struggle with that. What about setting boundaries with people around you and their access to you? It could be understanding your worth and not allowing others to dismiss you. It could show up in so many different ways. Another one, and I just had this conversation, maybe it's time to leave that toxic work environment. That is a form of self-care. How about stop biting your tongue and speaking and walking in your truth? All of those things are forms of self-care. And when we make that our focus, when we focus on us, the thing that allows us to be this and that to everyone around us, we tend to have a little bit more control over that burnout, right? Looking through that lens of things that are happening to us, not necessarily being good or bad, but just experiences that we have to go through to learn and to grow. So all of that to say, sometimes we have to understand that we have a choice in everything that we do in life. We absolutely do. And then sometimes we have to change our perspective and focus on us for a change.
Absolutely. And Ceah, I love what you said about self-care being boundaries, and I think sometimes we get confused and think that self-care is all about bubble baths and quality and quiet time, but boundaries is such a big, thing that a lot of women have trouble with these days. And so thank you for pointing that out. I heard this woman who was a mother CEO of a company, and she said, I have an S on my chest and it does not stand for superwoman, it stands for spent. And so it's time. Set the boundaries, take care of yourself. I love that. One of the most important topics here today is about advocating for ourselves and for each other. Can you talk about how women can best serve as allies for other women, especially intersectional women?
Yes. It's so sad, that for a lot of us, one, we don't advocate for ourselves, right? And there are a number of reasons we don't do that. A lot of it is society has taught us how we should behave, right? We should be modest. We don't naturally have skills as women to be successful. Like that's what they told us. And we don't have to believe that hype, right? You shouldn't brag on yourself, because when you brag on yourself, then you might come across as being, self-absorbed. And we don't want those negative connotations attached to us. We have to admit, like gender role and societal norms play a really big part in creating that environment. And I talk about this a lot. If you were snooping around my social media, one of the things that I really like to do is coach others and help them get to a place of authenticity, right? Like you said, because that truly is your superpower. And when it comes down to advocating for yourself or advocating for others, one of the easiest ways to start the journey, if you're not comfortable, is to advocate for others. It becomes practice, right? For you learning how to promote and advocate for yourself. And it helps to build that confidence. Another thing that I've realized that really makes this easy in terms of advocating for ourselves is really connecting with your purpose, right? What are you on this earth to do? And I know it's such a big question, but I sit in rooms of women and I ask them, who are you? And I get titles, right? I'm a mom. I do this at work, but then it's like, but who are you? Like, what really makes you tick? What's your purpose? And when you spend that time, right, really understanding who you are from that authentic place, and you're able to figure it out, you become more intentional with what you do, but you also gain clarity. And in that clarity, you're able to better articulate into words the value that you bring. And then another one, and this is my favorite, we talk about allyship all the time. This is a great space for you to tap on others to begin to advocate for you, right? So you're advocating for yourself, you're advocating for others, and then you're asking others to do the exact same thing for you. And I always like to look at it as every major brand has a street team, right, to get the word out about them. And we as people, we are our own brands. And so we, in essence, have to be the CEOs of ourselves. And so we need to make sure we're creating the street team of people who are prepared to sing our praises, especially behind closed doors. So I hope that helps.
Oh, that's very helpful. And I love what you said about advocating for ourselves. And, for the most part, women have a really hard time being a cheerleader for themselves. And so it's, we've got this tradition at Fairygodboss with a lot of our events. At the end of the calls, we ask all the women on the call to tell us what they're most proud of that they've accomplished. And you'd be shocked to know how uncomfortable most women are when they're asked that. And so I love that. If you're afraid to do that, start cheerleading for other people, and then they'll cheerlead for you. And that's just beautiful. I love it. Thank you, Ceah.
It truly is about, creating new habits. I think about a lot of the coaching that I do, I root it in mindset, because if you think about everything that we talk about, we go through, it's all a cause and effect, right? And so if we're sitting and we're insecure, I always, when I'm coaching, I try to, okay, so what is it that you're feeling? Okay, why are you feeling that way? What thoughts are feeding what you're feeling? And if we take it back, it's usually, something that someone said about us, a feeling that we may feel about ourselves. It could be a way that we were taught growing up. We don't talk about ourselves. You let other people do that. Don't toot your own horn. Like, we hear that a lot. And so one of the things I try to get folks around me to realize is we have a choice. And I say that a lot because you absolutely can say all of the things that I've learned in my life, they don't serve me. They don't make sense. And as an adult, I get to say, okay, this makes sense to me. I'm going to pull that over here. And then I'm going to show up this way. But it all goes back to mindset. We can connect everything, back to mindset. And so what is it that we're telling ourselves that gets in the way of us self-promoting, right? Is it that negative talk that, oh, now we're going to sound conceited? Oh, God, that's not very ladylike to toot your own horn. Like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. And maybe you just take on the mindset of none of that matters. At the end of the day, you're awesome. You're a freaking unicorn. And if they don't want to listen to it, they don't have to. But again, goes back to that mindset so that you get that confidence to stand in that authenticity. And that's why I always say, man, if we can do that self-awareness work to connect with our why, if we could do that work to really understand like who we are, what our superpower is, you navigate that space, the space differently. People can't tell you about yourself when you know who you are. And so getting to that place of truly knowing who you are, man, is a catalyst for all different types of awesomeness to happen in your life.
Is anyone else, just snapping over there? Yes. So can you share with the Fairygodboss community a mistake that you've made in your career? And we want to know, how were you able to regroup from that, and what did you learn from that mistake?
Ugh, I don't know anybody that's had a ton of success and they don't have a bunch of failures along the way. I don't necessarily, like to say that they're mistakes. Again, the lens that I look through is hey, everything in the universe happens for the good of me. And so a learning opportunity for sure was what happened early in my career at T-Mobile, where I was a top performer. Coming out of the military, there's just certain, work ethic that's just kind of ingrained in you. So I've always been a workhorse. I got that from my parents. And so coming into corporate, America, kind of thinking that, okay, I'm just going to be the best at what I do, and then I'm going to get promoted. Okay, well, I quickly realized that's not how that works, right? I thought, work hard, at least work harder than everybody else, and you'll get that next job. Okay, well, I will tell you something. My career stalled. It was strange. I'm in the sales environment, I'm best in class, and I was still not getting promoted, right? And so I had this mentor who sat me down, because at this point, I'm ready to just leave this company. I'm like, oh my God, I'm their top person and I'm being ignored. Like, how can I bring this company all of this money? The store is horrible. They're bringing me in to fix it and I'm not getting promoted. And so I sat down with my mentor as I was literally on my way out. I started applying for jobs and I blamed the entire company. Like, they don't see awesomeness. I don't know what's wrong with them. And this mentor of mine introduced something to me that has really become a pillar in my teachings. And it is a career coaching practice called the power of a pie. And I don't know if you've ever heard of it, Alexis, but here it is. The pie, the acronyms are performance, image, exposure, and advocates, right? And so I learned that, again, any strong brand needs all of these things to be successful. You think about any brand that's thriving in the world, you can't have a bad image and be performing great, right? All of these things, go hand in hand. And so for me, I was a top performer, but people didn't know who I was. No one was talking about me in rooms. My name was not being uttered any place other than my little tight community, because that's where I stayed. Like within my district, people knew who I were. In the region, outside of that, no one knew. And so I became super intentional about understanding my brand, right? And this was a really great exercise because, one, it taught me that what you think people think about you isn't what they really think about you. Okay. And so there's some work that may need to be done there. It also gave me an opportunity to find out who were really champions of my brand. Like, who could I pull around me to really become an advocate, right? I sought out feedback from people all across the company because I wanted to know what the word on the street was, right, about me. And once I took that time to understand my pie, that was some self-awareness work too, because I understood that maybe sometimes the way that I was showing up wasn't in line with the brand that I had hoped that people would expect from me. And so I had some work to do, and I did the work. I got very intentional about it, but I could tell you it was a turning point in my career, because what I learned is during all of this time, the reason why I wasn't standing out, of course, was pie, was I wasn't standing out was the thing. I was doing everything I could to conform, everything I could to fit in, right? And so when it came down to choose, I looked like everybody else. And so I had to do that self-work and really come to grips and understand what my authenticity was and walk in that. But then what was my unique value that only Ceah Justice could bring to the table. And I can tell you, doing that work, as you mentioned, I was promoted 8 times across 7 cities within the company. I stepped into the executive ranks, and I can tell you, I have no intention on stopping. Really, for me, taking that time to intentionally manage my brand, it was a game changer for me. And more importantly, it taught me the power of allyship, advocacy, and sponsorship, the S word.
I love that, and congrats to you on that. And I was just over here scribbling notes. Be intentional about your brand. So powerful. So then I've got one more question before I'm going to open it up to the audience. Throughout your career, you've made a point to challenge the status quo. How do you keep the courage and the energy? And what advice do you have for all of us on how we can also make a difference?
Ooh, well, girl, if you can't feel my passion through the phone and my energy through the phone, I'll be honest, my courage and energy, it truly does come from a place of understanding my purpose. And I know it sounds so simple, but it was a long journey to get here. It was a lot of accepting the fact that, man, okay, I'm okay, but I'm not happy. Like, I feel like we were all created by this universe to be on this earth with a purpose. And once I connected to, what my purpose was, the work became easier. I feel like who I am and the work that I do is what I was born to do. And so it's easy to be passionate about something that you love. I truly feel like I was born to help others, to advocate and be a voice for those that can't speak for themselves. I was born to help others, uncover their superpower and find confidence in being different, right? I'm a walking definition of nobody stereotype. And so I get to use my personal testimony, for that, right? And I wear it like some people go, oh my goodness, Ceah, you talk about being the first and the only. When I was going through my journey, I didn't see people that looked like me. Representation matters, but guess what? I never saw that. And so I had to become that, right? And some people go, man, that's a lot of weight on your shoulder. It could be, right, if you weren't born for this. But I feel like, again, you can't tell me I wasn't born for it. And so I wear it like a badge of honor. I look at it like, oh my God, the universe chose me to do this important work. And it's something that I really don't take lightly. I get up and I do this work every single day because I know that I have to be that representation for people that look like me, right? I have an 11-year-old daughter that already does not have a problem using her voice, right? But I know that she's watching my every move and watching how I navigate this space. And then I also have an army of women and allies that are around me that have my back, that make it so easy for me to get out here and be fearless and courageous and passionate and unafraid.
Yes. And one thing that you said, it sounds easy making sure that you find your purpose and connect to that. And I just want to say, I think a lot of people struggle with that. And we could do a whole panel about connecting to and finding your purpose. And I could listen to you talk about that all day. But I just, starting with the purpose, I couldn't agree with you even, more. So I want to open up, I've got a ton of questions and I will try to get to all of them. Bear with me. Okay, so, and you sort of touched on this already, Ceah. How can we navigate advocating for ourselves without coming across as conceited or pushy?
Yeah. I think the first thing we have to do is stop worrying about what other people think and just do it. Right? We have to get out of our own heads. A lot of times we create that, right? We hear terms like imposter syndrome. Man, if we could just for once just step outside of that and just do it. And just do it. Sometimes, right, we waver between taking the risk and not taking the risk. And I get it. I am in no place to judge where people are and say, hey, you got to go out there and do it. But for me personally, it's you got to take the risk, because not taking the risk, right, sitting in that space does more damage. If it is truly your plight to move forward in your career, then sometimes you got to navigate a little bit differently. And I think one way to do it is being intentional and not doing it alone, right? Yes, advocating for ourselves is tough, especially if you've fallen into the cycle of believing the hype of, hey, you're not skilled. You probably need to go and get some more training to be able to do this. Or again, if you're talking about yourself, yeah, people are going to think you're conceited. Nobody wants to know it all. And then sometimes it's all in the approach. And so that's where I feel our mentors and advocates, right, come into play, because they create spaces for us to maybe do some little role playing in skill practice on how to say it, right? Practice makes perfect. And so creating those environments around you to where you build up that confidence to where you're willing to take that risk despite what others might think about you. And that's my 11-year-old daughter. The other day, she told me, and it wasn't even anything trivial, but she's like, I feel like you're trying to take my choice away. I've created a monster. And I was like, baby girl, you know what? I'm not trying to take your choice away at all. You're absolutely right. Let's talk about this a little bit more. And so if we can if we can teach an 11-year-old to have courage, to stand in the moment and say that, I have to take a step back and go, why? Why is she feeling that courage? And some of that is there's a support system around her that's saying you can, right? It's safe for you to do it. And so I try to make it a point when I see people not tooting their own horns to give them their flowers, but then to encourage them to do the same in the next, hey, tell us about that event you were at. Or, oh my God, did you just do such and such? Oh my, you should tell people. You know, and so helping each other to get to a point to where we're a little bit more comfortable speaking out.
Absolutely. And then I've got a question from Krista. Have you ever worked with women who see other women as competition and work harder to prop themselves up versus supporting other women in their success? If so, how do you handle those people, and can they be converted to support, or should we simply avoid them?
Yes. And so absolutely. Absolutely. Working in that environment right now. And can they be, converted? I think it's all about the people. I always try to convert. That's just me and my personality. And how I do that is through a real conversation, right? I think transparency is always super important. And I can tell you in full honesty, I have been able to convert some folks, right? And some of these people are part of my tribe now. It wasn't easy, but it took me pulling them aside and saying, hey, we're in this together, right? And let me tell you like what this looks like. And then when you want to take it a step further, think about Black women, right? Think women, we're already outnumbered. And then when you start talking about my intersectionality, a Black woman, we've been told that there's only space for one of us. Right? So all of us can't be here. So I've been in those environments in particular where I've had to call, a friend over and say, hey, listen, we need to sit down and talk about this, because the way that you're showing up, I don't really understand. If it's something that I'm doing, I want to make sure that, I learn from this moment so that I can show up best for you. And me stepping in the moment and being supportive, right? But being real, putting it in their face and saying, okay, how you're showing up right now is kind of feeding, right, the problem. Let's work together at this. And I've been successful. And then there have been some opportunities. You remember when I said we can only focus on those things that we can change? That includes people too. And sometimes, right, we're not able to change them. And so it becomes an issue of yeah, it doesn't impact me. I can't change them. And so how do I navigate this space to keep my peace, right? How do I navigate this space in my most authentic way and always show up in love? And so that then becomes my focus. But I'm always a converter. I always try to convert. I feel like if any of us could just sit down and have a conversation, us women, we could figure it out. Like, I just always believe that. And I can tell you that 9 out of 10 times, the conversion happens. But then you have that one, it just never does. And that's okay too.
Thank
Ladies,
you.
thank you so much. This was
Thank you.
incredible. I could listen to you all day, Ceah, and I'm converted to whatever, whatever you tell me. I always feel so inspired when I talk to you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Alexis.